that good? Okay. Great. So, Steve, oh, is that good? Is that too much? That's good. That was right there. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So, all right. So Steve, tell us more about your Qigong, your background in the mental training. So what I wanted to learn is when you actually train and compete in kettlebells, lifting, it's such a mental sport, a mental resilience and endurance. And so how do you use a lot of your Qigong and your training to not only flow the energy through your body for long durations, but then have the mental toughness through meditation and breathing that you've learned from your Qigong days?
It is very complementary because the fundamental Qigong literal translation would be breathing skill, or breathing ability, or breathing exercise. So Qigong is the study of breath control and directing the breath. Kettlebell as a sport, as you mentioned, it's extremely demanding mentally as well as physically because you're working for 10 minutes straight without stopping. So you're doing a repetitive lift. For example, a one-arm snatch or a clean and jerk with 2 kettlebells. The sport is for 10 minutes. So you're trying to get as many reps as you can in 10 minutes and you can't put the kettlebell down. If you put the kettlebell down, your set is over. So from a competitive sport perspective, you have no chance of winning if you quit early. You have to work the whole 10 minutes and beat the people on the platform that's next to you. So it requires a lot of the same properties. First of all, the breath control, because there's a physiological correlation between your breathing rate and your heart rate. And so because you're under load, the kettlebells have weight. They can range, at the professional level for men, each kettlebell is about 71 pounds. So when you're doing, say, jerk or clean and jerk with 2 kettlebells, you're moving 142 pounds, and for 10 minutes straight. It's a lot of volume when you start adding that up. And or even at an amateur level, you might be using, a 35-pound kettlebell if you're a man, or a 53-pound kettlebell for a woman. If she's beginning, she might be using a 18-pound kettlebell or a 25-pound kettlebell. So what happens is under this load, and when you keep working, the heart rate wants to keep accelerating. And so if it gets too fast, you get into oxygen debt. You can't sustain that. It becomes pure anaerobic and it's going to end. So you have to have the development of the breath control to keep the breath as slow as possible in order to keep the heart rate at a maintenance level. And so this requires obviously a high degree of cardiovascular conditioning, but it also requires the mental discipline to control. And we understand so much more in terms of human performance than we did even 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And one of the things we know a lot more about, and also with the work that you do, is the mental and emotional impact on physical performance. And so at a high level, especially a sport like kettlebell, you have to actually control your emotions, because if you allow too much excitation, it stimulates too much the sympathetic, and that's going to create a lot of energy expenditure. What we want is we want to try to keep that parasympathetic, that calm, relaxed effort, so that it allows us to work at a high level of volume and speed and strength, but we're able to control the heart rate, so we can keep. So it would be similar to, say, a middle distance runner, that they're actually running very fast, but they're sustaining that. It's not a sprint in a sense. It's not a 100-meter where it's an all out, but they're going probably 85% capacity. They're still running very fast and they're able to extend it over, 10 miles or more. Kettlebells is a similar energy system. So it's aerobic, but you also have a lot of anaerobic. You also have a lot of the glycolytic energy pathway. And so the Qigong really ties in the breath control and in the mental control to stay calm under stress. Because when you have those weights and you're like, oh, this hurts, if you let that part of your mind dominate, you basically will talk yourself into failing. So you have to have that calm inner peace that just tells you to stay calm under stress, under pain. And anyone can develop it, but it is a skill. It's a skill that can be developed. And a lot of times, even high-level athletes, if they don't have the right mental, what I call clarity, they're not going to succeed. They end up having to put the kettlebells down early because they just lose focus. Okay. So that's something you see even at the highest level of sport. And every athlete talks about the higher level of the athlete. When you ask them, especially the older, more experienced athletes, they'll almost always tell you it's 90% mental, even in a sport like baseball, because your physical skills are only going to be there for you to your ability to actually direct it through the mind. And so that's the area that I really worked on from a fitness and strength conditioning perspective. Kettlebell is one of the best tools that I've ever come across for doing that, because it demands that mind-body training and discipline.
So if you haven't seen Steve Cotter's Instagram, just sign up for it because it's awesome. He does the most amazing kettlebell tosses and juggling with them out in the yard, and it's just unbelievable what he's doing with these kettlebells. And so tell us a little bit about the progression in the last 5 years that I've seen you do, and then in the next 5 years where you see this whole tool going.
Great. Well, when we just break it down to its basic form, the kettlebell is a weight, just like a dumbbell is a weight, just like a barbell is a weight. Okay, so in that way, there's nothing outside of the science. In other words, we have a mass and we're trying to move it from a fixed point to another fixed point. So if I have an overhead weight, I'm going from point A to point B. Okay, that's biomechanics. And so there's nothing mysterious about a kettlebell. What's unique about the kettlebell is the design. So the design puts the handle and the load with the space between it. Say a dumbbell, everything's here on a linear plane. With a kettlebell, the handle's here and the weight's here. So you have an offset center of mass and you have a space between the handle and the ball. So that allows for a variety of techniques that is not available with a dumbbell. We have all the things we can do. So we can improve muscle strength, right? We use heavy weight, low reps. That's the formula that's been around forever. We can improve muscular endurance. We use lightweight, high reps. We can improve power, we move the mass in a shorter period of time. So work per unit of time gives us that power output. So we can do all of those things with kettlebell, which fits to any strength conditioning program. But because of the handle, it also allows us to throw it and catch it, to flip it. So now we can do juggling. In terms of my progression, when I first got into the kettlebell, it was about how do I get stronger, how do I get more powerful. So you learn the basic movements, and the basic is going to be the foundation in kettlebells, just like any sport or any method. So you have your swing, you have your squat, you have your press, you have your clean, you have your jerk, you have your snatch. So kettlebell kind of combines aerobics with a lot of the Olympic weightlifting movements of full body movements like clean and jerk and snatch. Okay. On top of that, so my progression has been, it's like life. My interest is not what can you do when you're 18 or 28 or 35. Can you still do it when you're 45? Can you still do it when you're 55, 65? It's about the whole life. It's about being effective, being healthy. It's not really about the competition. The sport is something that you may do for a period of time if you're competitive. But what I'm really interested in, what I'm really promoting to the world, it's that lifelong health and wellness. So if you're 60 years old just getting into it, you can use a very light kettlebell, but the movements are very therapeutic for your body because it's using our natural movement patterns like we would use in our daily activities, sitting into and out of a chair, picking something, putting it on a shelf, grabbing something and turning. These are basic movements. They're bending down to pick something up, or squatting down, or jumping up.
Right.
These are fundamental movements that are foundation for sport and also foundation for healthy living over the course of time.
Right.
Holding your grandchild, your groceries, right? So this is functional movements. Kettlebells is about that. And so what I've progressed to is, when I first got involved, 15 years ago with kettlebells, it was, getting stronger, getting faster. Then as I learned more and the world started opening up and we started being able to communicate more through social media, and the sport of kettlebell comes from Russia, so you start having access to the archives and the traditional training coming out of Russia, and traveling there and meeting high-level coaches that they run it as part of the Soviet sports system. So you have a lot of research coming out with athletes, coming out of the literature with the effects of kettlebell on the physiological changes, VO2 max, breathing rates, this type of thing, muscle activation. So we have the science, but what I've done is I've brought in a lot with the martial arts, with the mental focus, the breathing, and the holistic approach. I see it as a tool for health. I see it as a tool for wellness, to make your body feel good. Not just, bodybuilding so I can lose 10 pounds of fat, or I can make my muscles look more beautiful. You can do that. The aesthetics is there, but the focus is really on the performance and the wellness. So with me, I'm less of a purist than I was when I started, because I realized that you have the science, but you have the art, and that's the human expression. That's every person. You and I are a little different. I mean, physiologically we're different. You're taller and thinner. I'm shorter, more stocky. So there's, some people are more round, some people are more, we're not the same. Nobody's the same. So there's basic movement patterns that are going to be similar, but how our bodies do those movements will be based on strengths and weaknesses, limitations of flexibility. Some people have more flexibility or less, so we can work around where we're at and get better at that. That's really the beauty of the kettlebell. And the art form is, today I just want to move. You don't have to follow some rigid structure like you would in a sport conditioning, where you're doing, you go to practice and you start with the running, and it's not necessarily like that. It's like, today I feel like I just want to get a sweat. So you can use a light kettlebell and you can toss it around, and I'll show you guys some of these things where, you can see the variety, and at the end of it, you can do almost anything and you're still going to feel great. You're still going to get a great workout. If you're really into the, just killing yourself with your workouts, if it's CrossFit or you're just a hard driving person, you can really smoke yourself in 10 minutes. I mean, you can kill even the highest conditioned athletes. You get them doing snatches, after 20 or 30 snatches, they're going to be completely toasted. So you can really just kill the person, figuratively speaking, if you're looking for that smoker as a workout. But over the long term, it's really about the skill development, doing it without injuring yourself. And I focus a lot more on the range of motion and the flexibility and the mobility, because I like to feel good. I don't like having pains in my body. And my program also includes with it, the flexibility and the mobility, because you can't just do the kettlebells. It matches, sometimes I'll even use it with barbells, and you can do running, and you can do, body weight conditioning. It fits into other programs. It's not like you have to do everything just with the kettlebell. So I guess that's my progression, is it's become less about just, strength conditioning to be a better athlete, and it's become about that, but also more importantly about having a healthy life and a pain-free body that feels good, that's energetic, that I can sustain over the rest of my life.
Awesome.
And it's about the movement and the expression that just feels good. You can do whatever you want, and you can let out that stress, and it just feels great.
Definitely. Well, it is a lifestyle, and I can attest to it because it's been part of my lifestyle since I met Steve, and he started showing me how to actually swing a kettlebell. So it's fantastic. And tell us a little more about your flexibility routines going into it, and then how you gain it through the movement systems.
Absolutely. I mean, I was first exposed to the importance of flexibility as a 12-year-old studying martial arts. I was stretching. The first I would say that I ever got any real, I'd say, scientific stretching is when I met you, and I met Dean Brittingham with the AIS, I guess from Aaron Mattis, right, originally. And the AIS is a great system. More recently, I've been exposed to the DCT, which is a dynamic contraction training, and that kind of has its roots in the resistance stretching, which originally comes from Bob Cooley, who wrote the book Resistance Stretching. The founder of the DCT system is Nick Bartolotta in Los Angeles, and he's doing great things. So I really, I'm constantly improving my knowledge base, understanding what's the kind of available science to just be more effective, learning how to use the body, learning to contract in the right areas. And in addition, I also like yoga very much. I don't have any formal training, but I've studied different yoga systems, and there's a lot of value. And the yoga actually is very similar to my background in Qigong. Sometimes that's called Chinese yoga or Taoist yoga, but the yoga has some complements in terms of the mental and the breathing and the meditative components. So flexibility is a big part of what I do. It always has been. For some years, I kind of moved away from it because I was always very flexible through the martial art training. And then when I started, around 2007 is when I started doing international seminars. 2008, I started doing the certifications, and